We're on. We're live.
All right. Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
Bill, here we are. We're live. We're
Live to you
actually
from Scott's studio.
from
Right?
Scott's studio. That's what we call it. It's like Studio 360.
Uh,
To
so
work
that
with a little.
so that Benjamin and I get to be executive producers. Is that how
Yeah,
that
you
works?
both get executive producer
Very
credits.
nice. I like
This is
that. I
EP
like that.
credits.
Yeah.
We're live right now. Here we
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
and it's yet another day of in Donald Trump's America. Right? I mean,
Well, yeah. There's actually more serious things happening in other parts of the world than here.
but we're always a part of it.
We're always
At
we're
this
always
point.
well, and with this president, we're always lagging behind, right?
Well, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I saw that Laura Loomer and what's her name? Oh gosh, Marjorie Taylor Greene are fighting.
Well, right. Well, Laura Loomer is pretty anti-Semitic, right? Or
No,
did I get
well,
that? I think or did I get that? I get my
you're right.
I get my race baiters confused. I think isn't Laura Loomer? She's not pro-Israel. Is that correct?
No, Laura Loomer was for this attack,
Oh,
and Marjorie Taylor Greene is against it. She's as is Tucker Carlson.
right. Well, that Carlson
Because
doesn't.
this is I mean look this is the sort of the people that took Trump at his word as America first, meaning non-interventionism, a sort of more hands-off approach to the world, not being the world's police, not doing nation building, not sort of trying to make the world over in our own image, that sort of stuff. I think feels slightly betrayed when they're like, "We'll take nothing less than unconditional surrender." Okay.
Right.
But then the Laura Loomer was like, "This is all on X. I hate that it's X, Twitter. It's on Twitter. This is all on Twitter. I don't know what you call it.
I actually did away with my Twitter account. Do not
I didn't. I
do
still
not
have
need
it,
to
but
be
I don't
part of
really.
the that universe anymore. Yeah, right. But go on.
I'm barely a part of it, but I'm a part. I guess I don't really tweet anymore, but yeah. So Laura Loomer basically said, "Look, these people want us dead. You know,
Which people want instead?
the Iranians.
Oh, okay, okay.
I guess this is. I mean, you're gonna make me pull this quote up. Do I have to pull this up now? Because I already did look at this today, but
Well, that's okay.
let's.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I have to admit, what those two people think does not carry a lot of weight for me.
Yeah.
But it is, and I think it's my favorite thing is, well, it's a horrible thing, but Trump was telling them not to do it, and in the first round of bombing, the Israelis took out the Iranian chief negotiator, the guy who was negotiating with the USA, and now suddenly Trump has because he needs to be near the action. He couldn't stay at the G7 long enough to do anything, and
No,
had to
you got it. No.
right because I guess his personal cell phone didn't. He didn't have enough bars up there in Canada, so he had to come. He couldn't get very good reception, and the Russians needed him to be a little closer to one of their microphones, so he had to come home so they could listen. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, Bill, yeah, ridiculous is an interesting. We could call it many things. It's funny that Netanyahu said. Well, first off, Trump said, "Wow, what did Trump say? I forget what he said. I should have looked this up, but he said something on Truth Social. But then Netanyahu Monday in the ABC interview said, "I mean, I understand America first, but I don't understand America dead." And so I guess that would be on the Laura
Well,
Loomer side of things,
well,
or the neocon side of things, that largely that Iran and their nuclear aspirations won't stop with sort of aggression to Israel, but will.
the nuclear, an almost nuclear Iran is not really a threat to the United States. Uh, I think Netanyahu has wanted to pull America into a war with Iran. He's not the only one. I mean, there are even some moderate Israelis who think
But
we should be.
couldn't you launch a nuke? I mean, I guess Can't an interballistic nuke hit us? I mean, can't they?
Oh, I don't.
We have
They're yeah. It would be out of the air before it got here.
We can intercept with Star Wars stuff. Does that?
I know. I don't. I think what their technology. They don't have. I mean, that's the Koreans have been working on. North Koreans have been working on this, and they might have a missile now that can reach our shore, but the Iranians are so far behind.
Well, what if they get the rocket from the North Koreans?
Well, there we go.
The axis of evil.
What if? There we go. The axis. The good of bringing back the axis of evil. Iran. It could possibly be a threat. It's probably more. Probably Iran is now more dangerous to American interests around the world than it was before Israel did this. Because the only thing is Iran has left are sleeper cells. I mean, their surrogates are gone. Hamas is decapitated. The Houthis are, still occasionally getting things off, but they've been pretty decimated. Hezbollah has been wiped out, and now, I mean, basically, Iran's air defenses are gone.
Okay, they're cut. You got to cut the head off the snake, I guess.
Well, they're killing.
But at this point, is it the opposite? Is the whole body off the snake, and all that's left is the head?
I don't know. Well, again, and we have to understand when again, it was an interesting. I listened to Yossi Klein Halevi and Danielle Hartman, one of your favorite people, on soon to be one
possibly
of your
coming on Give and Take. I'm
possibly one of your favorite people. Yeah,
I'm going back and forth. This is
the
hardest fought interview. There's people like Bob Dylan is easier to get interviewed than Hartman.
Well, I want to hear that one. I want to hear your Bob Dylan interview. No, I mean, I think one of the questions, and even, I mean, Yossi Klein Halevi has been saying that, for 20 years, they ultimately are going to have to fight Iran. He's arguing, why do you do this? And one of the arguments is, well, Iran even has a doomsday clock. They've predicted, I mean, there's an apocalyptic dimension to this particular brand of Shia Islam that the ruling elites believe in Iran, and they have a doomsday clock counting down to the end of Israel. And they've expressed, which, by the way, you're not really supposed to be as a member of the UN, you're not allowed to call for the destruction of another nation. Howbeit,
I mean, it's just bad manners.
Yeah, well, right, it's bad manners, bad form. But the Iranians, have explicitly called for the destruction of the Israeli state. So, I understand that this doesn't excuse the continual killing of civilians in Gaza, and people inside Israeli society. There's a huge critique of what's continues to happen in Gaza, but Iran's a different thing. I mean, there was only one reason. I mean, now there was maybe 20 years ago there were more, but now there's only one destination for any kind of nuclear weapon from Iran, and that would be Israel. So
when you say the killing of civilians, though, you mean gratuitous killing, right? Because if it's an urban warfare, you're gonna
but it's beyond it. They're killing people. They're killing people in line for food. I mean, the governors are off over there. It's pretty awful. And again, also, we do need to realize when they say they took out their nuclear scientist and the president of the Iranian university, those people were in apartment buildings with their families and with other neighbors. So, it's one thing the generals, that's one thing if it's a war taking out generals, but they're taking out civilians. So when they say they're dismantling the nuclear Iran, well, they've killed a couple hundred civilians as well. So that's important. I mean, and they're getting kind of, it's interesting just when I listen to some of the Israeli and read some of the Israeli things, they're getting a little too used to this. It's a little problematic, I think. Yeah, it's kind of.
You cannot. I say it again. You can't make an omelet,
right,
without breaking a few eggs. I mean, this is these things. Now, I mean, it. Yeah, I mean, this is. We're not at the level of wanton destruction of our most just war of the 20th century. Most historians would consider, most ethicists would think, right? World War II, where Israel still looks puritanical and moral compared to the Allied powers in World War II. But yes, they're
Well, it's
approaching
a but you could
they're
different.
approaching the evil of the United
Well,
States, Great
I think
Britain.
it's a different kind of it's a different kind. And then again, there's this latent Zionism in you. It's
The
just
bombing
really
of Dresden. Why did we bomb Dresden, Bill? Was there any military
no. I'm not,
assets
I've
there?
never defended the bombing of Dresden. I think you can ask.
You've defended it, Bill. I've heard you off air.
Right. That and the firebombing of Tokyo.
I've heard you. I still have a
I-
T-shirt that said we never hit Dresden hard enough.
and I had "Burn Baby Burn" in support of the firebombing of
there's nothing-
Tokyo. Right?
There's
Yeah.
nothing like the smell of Dresden in the morning.
Oh my!
I've heard you
gosh.
say it.
Yes. Oh, all right. Moving on.
This is Scott's studio, baby.
Next week, Kurt Vonnegut will be on to respond to apparently what we have to come up with a warlike nickname for Scott.
That's a
Give
good
him
one.
hell. Give him Hell Jones.
Exactly. I'm
You know what? I think if any of our listeners have a tank helmet,
Hell Jones. Yeah.
if any of our
Like Dukakis, I could be Dukakis.
you know what I would like I think you should have a straight up tank helmet. I want the hat that that Donald Sutherland wore in Kelly's Heroes. He had he was a tank commander, but he looked like a World War One
I'm gonna find that for
pilot
you.
helmet. I want that.
Somebody find
That
our
is-
listeners. Find it on eBay, and we'll get it to Bill. eBay.
that
Who the
was my
hell else used eBay? When was the last time anybody used eBay?
I used eBay last week.
What did you
actually.
buy on eBay?
I bought. This is very cool, and he won't hear it. But I for my for Victor, my number four grandchild in the hierarchy. He had a birthday yesterday, and he's a big Phillies fan. So I bought him a vintage John Kruk Philadelphia baseball jersey. He's a great baseball player. He
nice.
just turned 9. And John Kruk and I come from the same hometown. I actually played when John Kruk was 5 and I was 6. We ran around together a couple times.
Wow.
So Kaiser,
I
West
think you
Virginia's
look
finest.
I think you look better than John Crockin right now. History
Thank you,
wasn't
thank you.
necessarily kind to
Well, I think John Kruk
years.
was kind to him. So-
Years.
For years. Well, he had a lot. Those knees were shot. So, there we go. But anyway, so I would love for the
But the
Iranian
riff-
people.
the
Can I just
riff-
finish it?
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
finish this?
Yeah.
I just hope that the Iranian people get a new. I hope there is regime. At this point, there needs to be regime change. This government of Iran has brutalized its own people, as well as created terror in the region. And boy, I tell you, it's good. Boy, having Putin as your best friend, that really has come in handy for Iran, hasn't it?
Hasn't hurt Trump.
Hadn't hurt Trump. hasn't helped America, but it hasn't hurt Trump. That's where we go.
Hasn't hurt Trump having. But it is interesting the 0 for 2 that you think about. Just people that thought that Trump would.
Can't anything. Your subject is people. Your verb is thought, and somehow Trump is part of the predicate.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear this sentence. Go ahead.
People that thought that Trump. I had someone say to me the other day, "Man, I really did think Trump would be able to bring some closure to the conflict in Ukraine. I guess I was just wrong about that." I thought, wow.
Whatever gave that person any notion?
What would it all? Yeah, and what's interesting? Like I think, just the absolute arbitrariness and it's insane. But
Wait, he doesn't. Well, first of all, again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to question what the current state of his mental health is. Just temperamentally, he has neither patience or a long enough attention span to do serious diplomacy. I mean, I think real diplomacy is just really boring. Actually, a guy who's part of the not the Abraham Accords, but what was Clinton saying before the Abraham Accords was the I forget
the
what
Oslo,
those-
what is
yeah,
that?
yeah, something like
The
that.
Oslo
A guy,
Accords.
yeah, a guy, an Israeli, one of the part of the negotiating team for the Israeli government. I heard him speak, and he goes, "There's nothing more boring than being a peace negotiator."
I
And
imagine.
negotiate treaties. He goes, "It's just you sit for years and months, and they're lying to you, and it says it, and then occasionally we get something. Usually not, but occasionally. So that it's a
Sounds
different.
like divorce court.
Well, he actually used that analogy. He said it's wrong to call it peace treaty. It's more like a divorce. In other words, when you're making peace, you're really coming up with a divorce settlement. It's akin to that, which means everybody's going to lose something, and that's part of why it's hard, right? Yeah. At any rate, but I do hope that somehow this does not lead to greater suffering for the Iranian people, and certainly, and Israel does not need any more. They don't need any more dead civilians in Israel. They've been through enough. So let's hope that this. But I'm not. Again, I. Who are the major players right now involved in this?
Well,
On
that
your
we
front line, you got Ayatollah and Bibi, and then back on and beside them is Putin and Trump. There is but sometimes who would have figured that Menachem Begum would have made peace with the Egyptians. I mean,
this looks like a
so
job for little Marco. I don't know, Bill.
yeah, but maybe
this is the world we
occasionally,
live
like you
in.
say, even a blind squirrel occasionally.
But Tucker, I mean, Trump went after Tucker Carlson on social media. This is calling him a kooky or something. So this is a
Well,
riff.
yeah,
Even
well, okay. Well, Trump and I would agree on it.
but yeah, I mean,
Kooky.
this
It's the
is
laugh, it's the laugh. He's like he's kind of like the Riddler. He's kind
dude, one of
of
the
Tucker.
creepiest things I ever read. Like, well, and at least in the past couple of years was, I think it was in the New Yorker or something. It was the account. What might have been about Tucker Carlson, but there was an extended account of Ron DeSantis coming to Tucker's house and trying to garner his support in the last presidential election, and because Ron DeSantis was and
Mr. Personality himself there.
yeah, it was so awful. Like, and I actually felt mildly sympathetic for the Carlson family to have to endure it. And that says something.
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis sounded like just a horrible house guest. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, did he wear his yellow boots, or were they white boots? They were white boots, right?
Yeah.
His flag, his hurricane boots.
He's
He wore.
such a goofball.
Oh my gosh! And elevated heels, white boots. At any rate. Oh my gosh! Well,
That's the party where woke goes to die. Florida's the state. Remember he said we're the state where woke goes to die.
oh my gosh! Well, a lot of things go to die in Florida.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Brain cells.
Yeah.
We love Florida. We kid Florida. We kid our Florida listeners. We kid them.
Wait a minute. What do you mean we
We
love
love
Florida?
them. I love
Well,
Florida.
people.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, what do I like in Florida? Sanford.
I mean, there's some great St. Augustine's a great place. The islands in the Gulf are beautiful. The Keys, all that stuff is great. Miami's a fun time, but still all needs to fall in the ocean. That's really what needs to happen. Yeah.
All right. There you go. You heard it here
And it
first.
looks like we might have another ice hockey championship from Florida. So there we go. And I don't mind the Miami Dolphins. They're fine. So there we go. Anything else I need to go from Florida?
No, I don't know.
All right, I'm good. We're good. We're good.
Bill. uh,
Speaking of death in Florida,
death. Yeah. I was talking with somebody and I was recounting the words of Lewis Smeads, who said famously, this was a psychologist at Fuller.
he's a professor. Yeah,
Yeah, professor of psychology at Fuller Seminary
pastoral counseling. Yeah,
in
pastoral
psychology.
theology.
Yeah, and he said apparently that he'd been married 7 times in his life to the same woman.
Yeah, I
And
remember
I
that.
love
Yeah,
that. I love that phrase.
yeah, no, it's great.
It's
Yeah,
this idea that really that his marriage succeeded because it died and rose again. I think I'm using that metaphor, but to
no,
describe his
but I
drink.
think
But
that that was a. No, I remember hearing him say that. I do. That's
yeah,
yeah,
but
that's a
this
big.
idea that you're first you're newlyweds, you have this thing, and then you have a newborn, and then there's this thing, and then your kid's school, and that every that man, you're empty nesters at some point, you're retired, you're in midlife, and all these things that a marriage has to die for another one to be born, right? And
Right.
a lot of times when marriages or relationships end, it's because there's nothing resurrected out of the death, right? That
Yeah,
just
they don't navigate that. I mean, there's studies. There is something that changes in almost people relationships every 7 years. And that I mean that the 7 year itch is a real phenomena, and how people navigate that, right, is and or not navigate it.
well, if you're
Yeah,
Donald Trump, you just kind of move on.
right. Yeah, no, I do think what is I mean, and I think it's I mean the literal resurrection is a metaphor, but it's actually more than a metaphor because you are constantly you know and particularly if we believe grace is. I mean, that's why I think Catholics are right that marriage is a sacrament. It shouldn't be a weapon. It should not be a sacrament that's used as a weapon against people whose marriage is in.
See, I
But
would like that would get me Catholic if they started having sacramental weapons. That's cool.
well,
I could
but
be
they
into that.
actually. But have you ever? I've been a part of one of those. I've been a part of a couple people who had to have their marriages annulled.
Yeah,
Who,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and that
It's generally
it's
it's not free
well, no, but
because you have to get
I
canon lawyers involved. I mean, you have to get it's not
no,
it's a lot
it's
easier if you have a little disposable income to get that
well,
done.
but it's even in people. I actually I went accompanied a woman who felt in her conscience she couldn't. She wanted to speak out, protest what her husband, her ex-husband was doing, and the kind of violence that was done to this woman by the archdiocese there in Texas was. As a matter of fact, she left the room and she was, and we'll just say I had some words with the bishop's representative, and just because, regardless, but my point is not the negative. My point is that it really is a marriage is part of is if you're married, it is a means of grace, and just like any other means of grace, it can be resisted, and I think this idea of I mean, the grace is something that is constantly being ministered because of the resurrection, right? The resurrection, the life, the acts of Christ, or the works of Christ, incarnation, crucifixion, resurrection, ascension, are all really operative in the life of the Christian and in our relationships and friendships. It's interesting. You say, I mean, I don't know how many different friendships you and I've had, but we've been friends long enough to have at least had 4 or 5 different ones, and I
Many
think
different
that's
ones. Many
and I
different
think
ones. Yeah.
that's and I do think there's something to that, right? And I mean, it's one of the great things about being a people of hope, right? Um, I remember a marriage counselor talking one time to a group of people, just saying, you don't know what can be reborn here, and he said, I'm not telling you what to do, but but where can you find hope, right? And sometimes people don't, but I think that's true about almost everything in our life, right? Whether it be careers, whether it be I think one of the troubles parents get into is not being able to adjust to the different stages
Yeah.
of what it means to be a parent, and I mean that starts as soon as they start walking, man. They're already moving out the door. Now they may come back again, and they may, but being able to adjust uh, to not being the center of their universe, and that your job is to actually help them leave, and help them and have them love something more than you. That's really something I think a lot of parents struggle with. And I love being a grandparent, but I like being a parent much more. And it's funny, a lot of people say the difference. But my role as a grandparent is a limited one, and I don't. And my kids are the ones who are raising their children, and it's I'm not trying to relive anything with my kids, with my grandkids. There's a temptation to do that, and I have great grandkids, and I love being involved with them. But part of letting go is, it's kind of like the ascension. They didn't want no one wanted Jesus to leave. No one wanted that to happen, but the next thing couldn't happen unless he went away. And I think allowing there to be death and resurrection, and allowing there to be a new season is very much a part of everything in our lives.
Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. Of course, that's John 12:24 from the King James Version. I love the verily, verily.
Verily, verilies are nice. Well, here's an interesting question, because you and I mean, we've talked around this issue, but I think part of why a lot of people in our profession, and clergies end poorly, is precisely because of the failure to appropriate this in their
Yes.
life.
Yeah. I mean, I think individually, institutionally, and congregation, at every level, it's brutal. I mean,
Yeah.
I think change is hard. I think and I just, we fixate on what feels safe, on what feels good, on what feels familiar. It's human nature, right? I mean, it's to some
Right.
degree, and so I mean,
Are
things.
we think something is good and safe, right?
Right, sure, right,
Yeah,
right.
we tell
Long
ourselves
after
miss
it's
it.
time, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that I think that's absolutely the case very often, and it's interesting. This is my favorite Frank Lake quote. Uh, that I read this thing all the time. He says, "The natural man in us tends to reject the paradox that mental pain and spiritual joy can exist together in us, without diminishing either the agony of the one or the glory of the other. The whole personality may be afflicted by a sense of weakness, emptiness, and pointlessness, without diminishing in the least our spiritual power and effectiveness. This is because Christ is alive to reenact the mystery of his suffering and glory in us. So far as our own subjective feelings are concerned, any inner-directed questioning of our basic human state may produce the same dismal answer as before. The cupboard is bare. While we regard our humanity as a container, which ought to have something good in it, when we look inside, we miss the whole point of the paradox. We are not meant to be self-contained, but channels of the life and energies of God himself. From this point of view, our wisdom is to let the bottom be knocked out of our humanity, which will ruin it as a container. At the same time, it turns it into a satisfactory channel." That to me is so profound that this whole, I love that when you look in and you think there's something good there and the cupboard is bare and you don't know what to do, you're actually probably in the place where divine energy might come through. And that's death and resurrection. When you feel that you're carrying the death inside you, that you could be on the cusp, right, of new life, and that right, and that's not a terrible spot to be. But I think that I love what he says, that's you miss the mystery if you're not seeing that the agony and the ecstasy can coexist. Right. That you're missing the whole point of the paradox, and you're missing the whole point of the Christ event, and that and so much, right? I mean, this is at a point where, whether we're talking about our personal lives, our public life, life in the church, life in the world, oftentimes these things that are seemingly cataclysmic are also, there's new things being born in them, and
Right. No.
it's hard to see that. It's hard to have eyes to see and ears to hear, but that is real.
Yeah, no, I think I could make an argument that many of the best things of my life right now are directly related to the worst days of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think yeah,
It's all about
and
the
that
arc of the death to resurrection, right? Sometimes
yeah.
that arc is short, sometimes it's quite long.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's not. Maybe it doesn't actually happen till the resurrection, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting thing too. There's a. I mean, it's I've my granddaughter graduated from the fifth grade, and when did all these? When all did all? I'm not sure when all these things started being graduations. Preschool graduation,
Yeah,
kindergarten
I'm
graduation,
against
fifth,
that.
eighth grade graduation, regardless. But and also I just mentioned so Abby, and she's turned into a lovely young lady. And I have this one picture. I walk by it every day on my way to the garage down our hallway, where she is about I don't know 2 years old. And I used to spend a lot of time. I would babysit her, and she and I would spend a lot of time together when she was 2 and 3. And there's a picture of her brothers a couple years older than her, and I'm teaching him how to make lemonade. And she when she was little, she used to put her arm right on my arm. She'd like almost interlock my arm. And sometimes we were at the playground and she'd get a little scared. She'd come over. And, that's, I mean, she gives me hugs and she's sweet, but obviously that's, it's not the same relationship, right? And there's a sort of kind of, and the same thing. I have this picture of Victor turned 9. He was such a cute little 4 year old. He loved hanging out with me when he was 4, and it was a lot of fun. And we would pretend we were Batman and Robin in the car. We'd sing the Batman song. It was a lot of fun. But I have this picture of both of them. That person doesn't exist anymore in time, and that person continually is changing, getting older. But I love them both as they are, and I love them till the day I die and beyond, right? But there's still that 4 year old is still in my heart. And that little 2 year old putting her arm in mine, that person still lives in my heart as well. And it's all part of that story. I mean, I have to think, even after the coming of the Holy Spirit and the boldness of John and Peter, we're reading Acts in my men's Bible study today. I can't help but thinking that there were moments where they were thinking back when it was just them and Jesus by the Galilee, and I'm sure they never stopped missing those days. I think their entire lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some of that is when like being able to let go
Right.
of things that are passing away, and not to
Right.
not to minimize the significance and beauty of those attachments and loves, but you can be overly attached.
Well, yeah, and if you want, see, the trouble is that the love doesn't die, but if you try to not let, love is constantly giving itself away, right?
Yeah.
Only love is credible, and genuine love is not something that holds on to. Don't hold on to me, Jesus says. I mean, what Mary wanted to keep the Jesus
Right,
she
right.
knew.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think we all. I mean, I mean, who doesn't? I mean, 3 and 4 year olds are like the best, right? Um, who doesn't? Are the baby time holding the baby, and they get complicated. But you know what? Again, there's a lot of birthdays in my family in June. Plus, it was just Father's Day, and I was able to wish all my sons Happy Father's Day, and they're all great fathers. And and to me, that's just part of letting the river keep flowing, right? And realizing that their stories are more front and center now, if you would. And I think because I believe in resurrection, because my story is intertwined with their story, but we each are separate individuals in God. There's a lot of freedom there to be able to enjoy and not be nostalgic, right? And I think that's I mean, to love those days, and they're all part of me, but I'm not nostalgic. I think that might be the right way to say
Yeah,
it.
nostalgia is yeah, it can be a debilitating thing. It's thinking of the yesterday I was talking to this guy William Deresiewicz on Give and Take, and we were talking about political orders, and Oh gosh, the guy Ezra Klein had on begins last name begins with a G, but he's talking about these orders that come and they're kind of all inclusive and all encompassing, and that I mean that is also the thing I think that kills the Democratic Party right now, right? It's the nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's looking back, right? It's never sort of,
Right.
and I think it really the Democratic Party has never gotten over the transition from sort of New Deal liberalism to Reaganite neoliberalism. I think it's never
Right.
gotten over that,
Yeah.
and still looking back, right, and not allowing the
it's
death and the
well,
resurrection to sort of happen.
how long did it take the Republican Party to get over appealing, being against the New Deal? Although you might say they're winning that right now. But,
Exactly.
but, but I think it's one of the worst things I ever. And maybe it's just me, but I hate when like you're at a funeral or at a wake, and someone says, "Well, at least you still have your memories." I'm thinking, what a lousy thing to tell
Not
someone.
comforting. It's not
Not comforting at all. Now, but Memoria, that's a different thing. The Augustinian understanding of this kind of almost collective, I don't know, this ground that is part of the territory beside God, right? Um, that's a different kind of thing. That's a living thing. So, like for instance, when I remember my dad, um, it's a living memory because I believe in the resurrection, right? I believe the love doesn't die because both parties are still have
Yeah.
some kind of existence. Yeah,
As NT writes, we're not shadows of our past selves. We're shadows of our future selves.
right, right. And that ground. Well, and again, I not that I presume to understand totally what Memoria was for Augustine, but that's a different kind of. That's a living. That's where the past and the present and the future all kind of reside in God, and that's a powerful idea. Yeah. But for us, I think the present is really the only place that we fully can embrace the divine and eternity, because we don't have that, we're not in the privileged position of the divine, right? So
You gotta live in the now.
yeah, living now, but the now is pregnant with what will be.
And Bill, the beat goes on.
The beat goes on in a new studio.
Amen to that. All right. Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
How do I stop this? Oh, there we go. Stop. I guess you hit stop.